Hi, this is Elaine Y. Shuttle again from the Milton Public Library, one of the children's librarians. And I'm here today with more stories from my story hat. I've got a long string of shells on here. Shells make me think of the ocean, and summer's coming. And a lot of people start thinking about the ocean and going to the shore or just looking on the sea, which is actually, when I go to the shore, what I like to do best. I just like to sit there and watch the waves coming and going, and the tide coming in and the tide going out. The ocean can be beautiful. Way out in the Pacific Ocean are the Hawaiian Islands. I was fortunate to go there one time, and I brought back a little piece of lava because, of course, that's what those islands are made of, from volcanoes. So, the story that I want to tell you first is a story from Hawaii. It's the story of the fisherman who caught the sun. Now, far out in the Pacific, on the big island of Hawaii, there lived a mother with many children. In the evenings, she liked to sit and talk to them and tell them stories of great heroes of the past. You know, we tell stories of the Greek and Roman heroes in the mythology, you know, Hercules and Achilles and all of these great people. But in the Hawaiian Islands, in Polynesia, they have heroes of their own. And the fisherman in my story is one of those. And as the evening wore on, the mother told her little children a story of one young man. Now, many of the young men in Hawaii would spend time going out to sea in their canoes, fishing, doing other things. They also liked to ride on long, flat boards on the waves. Today, we know of this as surfing, but long ago, people over here didn't know about surfing, but they did it on those islands. Well, one day, one of the young men, a fisherman, was sitting on the shore as night fell, and he was braiding together vines to make a strong rope. In those days, the sun would come up and race across the sky and set again in so short a time that the people had almost no time to get any work done during the daylight, and the nights were very long. And people grumbled and complained about how fast the sun went from its rising to its racing across the sky and setting again. Finally, the young fisherman said, "I'm going to do something about it," he said. "I'm going to confront the sun and make him slow down." His friends began to wail at him. "Oh, no, you must not, you must not. Don't you know how terrible the sun is? Why, you might be killed. You must not confront him, leave him be." But the young man said, "No, we need more hours of daylight. And so he continued braiding his rope and testing it and making sure that it was very strong indeed. Finally, one day after the sun had done its usual race across the heavens and set in the west, the young man took his great corded rope and put it in his canoe and began to paddle his canoe across the ocean towards the east, where he knew the sun would rise in the morning. He followed across the silvery trail that the moon cast upon the waves and went closer and closer to where he was sure the sun would appear in the morning. And there he sat in his canoe with his great corded snare ready. He waited, and gradually the sky began to gray, and then to get a little blue-purple tint in it, and then the little white caps on the tops of the waves began to glisten and sparkle with reds and oranges, and he knew that the sun would soon be up. And as it came up just over the horizon, he cast his great snare out, and the sun coming up was tangled in it and could not move. The sun raged and fumed and struggled, but the young man held tight to the end of his long snare. And the sun demanded, "Release me." "No," he said, "never more shall you be free to just race across the sky as you see fit. From now on, you will go slowly enough so that man will have time to collect his yams and coconuts and bananas and do his fishing and make his canoes and do all of the things that we need to live. From now on, you shall go slowly." The sun strained against the ropes, but could not budge the strong young man as he braced himself against the pull. Finally, the sun stopped raging and said, "All right, I agree. Let me go, and I will no longer race across the sky. I will take my time and split the day and the night into equal pieces." "Very well," said the young man, and he gradually began to loosen the snare. But he did not remove all of the ropes. He left a few dangling so that the sun would remember that he had been caught and could no longer move as he chose. And then the young man rowed his canoe back to the island of Hawaii. And when he arrived, all of his friends and comrades came to greet him, and they rejoiced to see that he was unhurt. And they also rejoiced to see that the sun now moved slowly across the sky, and they had many more hours of daylight to do their work. You know, if you look at the sun as it rises and as it sets over the water, you will often see golden streamers coming from the sun to the water. Some say that the sun is drinking up some of the water, but that's not what's happening. Those are the ropes that the young fisherman used to bind the sun and make him do his will. And to this day, as you see them, as the sun rises and as the sun sets, remember the young fisherman who caught the sun. a story from Hawaii. But you know, not all ocean stories happen in Hawaii. These shells could come from many places around the world. I'm thinking of another land now where there's a great mountain close to the edge of the sea, and a village way up near the top of the mountain in which lives an old woman. She was very poor. Whenever she had a few pennies put aside, she would go to the market and she would buy salt to put into her cooking pot. For this old woman loved to cook with salt. It made everything taste so much better. But she did not very often have pennies to use to buy salt. And so most nights she had to eat her vegetables plain, and they weren't nearly so tasty without salt. One day she noticed a fisherman who had come up the mountain to sell his fish in their market. And she noticed that all the dogs from the village were following along with him and licking at his ankles. And she went up to him and said, "What is this? What are the dogs doing? Why are they licking you?" "Oh," he said, "that's just because, I was wading around in the sea this morning between my boat and the shore, bringing my catch in, and my feet and legs got all wet with the salty water from the sea. And so the dogs are licking the salt off my ankles." "There is salt in the sea?" said the old woman. "Well, of course there is," said the man. "The whole sea is salt. Didn't you know that?" The people standing around laughed and called her a foolish old woman who did not know that the sea was salty. Well, she thought. For several days, she thought. And then she said, "I know what I will do. I will get some water from the sea and use that in my cooking pot. And then I won't need to waste my pennies buying salt, for the salt will already be in the water. Everyone will think how wise I am, and they will think what a good cook I am, because always my food will taste good." She thought about it some more. Everyone knew that the sea belonged to a powerful chief, and she wasn't sure if this chief would like anyone taking some of his water. But she thought, if I go quietly down, no one will see, and surely there's enough water that a little that I take won't be missed. So she wove herself a nice coconut cord sack, and in it she put a great hollow gourd, and she slung it over her shoulder and started down the rocky trail from her mountain village down to the sea, where she had never been before. She'd lived her whole life in that little village. At last, after many hours, she reached the shore, and the water was lapping up close to the end of the path. She looked around carefully, and she didn't see anyone, so she was sure that no one would see what she was doing. She took her gourd and she filled it right up to the top with the water from the sea. She grabbed some leaves to stuff in the top as a cork, put it back in her sack, and put the sack back over her shoulder, and started back up the mountain trail towards her village. Oh, it was so heavy, and the way was steep, and she had to stop often to catch her breath. And at one point, as she stood there, about halfway up, she looked back to look at the ocean again. And what did she see? The sand. The sand. The sea was going back. She didn't know that the sea had tides. It had been high tide when she filled her gourd, but now the tide had gone out. There was a wide stretch of sandy beach, drying in the sun, and the water looked far away. Oh no, she thought, this is terrible. The chief of the sea will certainly know that I have stolen some of his water. Oh, what shall I do? What shall I do? She thought for quite a while, but she had no idea what to do. And then it came to her, I'll take it back and pour it in. No one will know where it came from because the water is not like a yam or a coconut that is one thing, and if you move it, everyone knows it's gone. The water is all one. And so she carefully picked her way back down to the beach and poured the water out of her gourd back into the sea. She was sure no one had seen her. And so she started back up the path that led up the side of the mountain toward the village. And it was almost night when she neared the village, and she looked down again to see the ocean. And what did she see? The water was all the way back up towards the end of the path. High tide. Yes, the tide had come in, but remember, she didn't know. Oh, thank goodness, she said. It's all back. The great ocean chief will never know that I took any of his salt water. And she returned to her little house in the village and thought, I will never tell any of my neighbors what I tried to do, because surely they will think that I was just a foolish old woman to try to take water from the sea. That's the story of the woman who wanted to cook with salt water. It's not the only story that has an ocean in it today. I have a short one that I'd like to share with you. It's the story of the crab and the jaguar. One day, the crab sat on a rock by the edge of the ocean, playing a game with himself. He would call out, eyes, eyes, little eyes of mine, fly out over the great blue ocean, fly far. And his eyes would fly out of his head and fly out across the ocean. And then after a bit, he would say, eyes, my little eyes, fly back to me, quick, 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 quick. And his eyes would fly back and tell him everything they had seen. And he could amuse himself for hours doing this. One day the jaguar came down to the beach and looked and said to the crab, what are you doing? Oh, I'm playing a little game with my eyes, said the crab. Watch, see how it goes. And then he said, eyes, little eyes of mine, fly out across the ocean, quick, 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 quick. And then after a few minutes, he said, eyes, little eyes of mine, fly back to my head, quick, 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 quick. And his eyes flew back. "Oh, that's wonderful," said the jaguar. "Can anybody's eyes do that?" "I suppose," said the crab, if I speak to them." "Oh, well, I'd like to try it," said the jaguar. "Oh, I don't think you would," said the crab. "You see, out in the ocean, there lives the terrible Animali Modole, the father of the Trachera fish, and he might catch your eyes and eat them." "Oh, I don't believe in that. That won't happen," said the jaguar. "Please do it for me." "All right," said the crab. And then he said, "Eyes, little eyes of Mr. Jaguar, fly out over the ocean. Quick, 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 quick." And the jaguar's eyes flew out of his head and flew across the sea. "Oh, crab," said the jaguar, "this is wonderful." "Eyes of Mr. Jaguar, come back, back, back. Quick, 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 quick," said the crab. And the jaguar's eyes flew back into his head. "Let's do it again," said the jaguar. "Are you sure?" said the crab. "Remember, the terrible Animali Modole, the father of the Trachera fish, is in the ocean, and he might eat your eyes, and then you won't have any." "Didn't happen this time," said the jaguar. "Let's do it again." So once again, the crab sent the jaguar's eyes out over the water. Well, as it so happened, the great Animali Podole, father of the Trachera fish, was out there and saw the eyes of the jaguar flying and opened his mouth and ate them up. And no matter how the crab called, "Eyes, eyes of Mr. Jaguar, fly back, quick, quick, quick," the eyes never came. Oh, then the jaguar was very angry at the crab, but he couldn't do anything because the crab quickly crawled under a little rock and the jaguar couldn't see anything. And so he stumbled away from the beach back towards the jungle. He hadn't gone very far when he bumped right into a king vulture. "Where are you going?" said the king vulture. "That's just the problem," said the jaguar. "I don't know where I'm going. I can't see." And he told the king vulture what had happened. And then he said to him, "Can you make me some new eyes?" Said the king vulture. "I dare say I could, but there'll be a price." "What's the price?" said the jaguar. "If I make you new eyes, then whatever animal you catch to eat, you must be sure and leave a little bit for me." "Oh, surely," said the jaguar. "I can do that, yes." And so the king vulture made some new eyes for the jaguar, just as good as the old ones. And from that day on, the jaguar always leaves a little something from the prey that he has killed for his meal for the king vulture to eat. And he has never again asked the crab to send his eyes out over the ocean. The crab and the jaguar. 3 sea stories from today's Story Hat. Come see us this summer at the library. Find your voice this summer reading at the Milton Public Library. We all look forward to seeing you there. And thanks for coming to listen to stories from my Story Hat.